we just enjoy, I don't know how much we enjoy beating the heck out of each other, but it makes this league unbelievable.
And welcome everyone to a Big Ten Network chat. I'm Andy Katz, pleased to be joined by Iowa's Fran McCaffery, Rutgers' Steve Pikiell, and Wisconsin's Greg Gard. And Greg, I'll start with you. Just comparing summer of 2020 to what you experienced in the summer of 21. And if Steve and Fran can go after, what was it like to compare the two?
Well, completely different in all the positive ways you can think of, Andy. I mean, I had, obviously, my freshman from a year ago didn't really have a summer. So we had two groups really going through a summer for the first time and what it really needed to look like and be like. And I can't say enough for how valuable it was for us.
Steve?
Yeah, I mean, it was really different. I mean, it was really busy when you added the recruiting period too. We were having people visit, we hadn't had a person on campus in a year or 2 years. So all your recruiting classes now visiting and having junior official visits and then back on the road recruiting and having the kids here on campus and no quarantines, Andy. So that's the thing to celebrate. We didn't have any quarantines this summer. I didn't get any of those calls, from the doctor. So excited to be moving forward here and getting back to some kind of normalcy.
I think, both Greg and Steve summed it up well. I mean, it was the busiest I've ever been this June. And I think it was great. It was so great to be back on the road. We had prospects visiting campus, both officially and unofficially. We also had camp going on at the same time. I have a son who is going to be a freshman, and he was playing. They played 16 games this summer, so I went to every one of those. So I was really busy, but thrilled to be. And when you think back to what it was like a year ago, like Greg said, we brought that freshman class in. Luckily we opened the building and we actually had workouts. So at least once a day we could work out, and they could come into the gym and work out on their own if they wanted to. Because other than that, there was really nothing going on. There was no classes. They didn't do anything. They're the only people in the dorm. You imagine that for a freshman experience, it was horrible. So this year's group was a lot more normal. We were all together. We were running around like crazy, but we'll take that over what we went through last year for sure.
Greg, for years, there was a time period where you really couldn't work with your own guys in the summer. And then there was sort of a spoil of riches. And then it was all taken away. In doing it this past summer, in the last couple of months, what did you see that the value of what you get out of that summer period that translates into the season that you didn't have in 2021?
Well, I think the biggest thing, in addition to, all the skill development things, but just the chemistry, just the fact that you're together and not having to, last summer we each had your own basketball, you each stayed at your own basket, you sprayed it down, you couldn't come anywhere near anybody else. So we couldn't even play one-on-one. So just the whole chemistry component, and really for us, that's always been a big piece of our teams. We have to be together. And I think this has been enormous for us to be able to, I got a young group anyway. So if you would add a young group and not be able to be together, I think you really were going to take some steps backwards. But fortunately for us, we were able to have a really solid 8 weeks together. And now my guys are, they're obviously back on campus now, but it was huge for us.
Fran, one thing Steve just said about the no quarantine that I think we all started to talk more about, obviously, in the last year was the mental health aspect and that anxiety of, am I going to get contact trace? Am I going to get it? And all that. Not having that kind of stress with your players, with your staff. How much of a difference did that make?
Well, it's huge. It's interesting for me to hear what Greg said, because we didn't have that same experience. While it was awful, we actually had workouts. We could play 5-on-5. The coaches could interact with the players. I guess different states had different rules, but for us, I think, and for everybody, you're 100% right, Andy. The stress level was dramatically reduced. Now, if you remember last year, again, we're all relating it personally. We had 9 guys get it last June. So we were shut down for a while. And then when we came back and practiced. So it was different than what experience Greg had. you know, and then you're saying to yourself, okay, was it good that guys got it in June? Maybe they won't get it later. Like nobody really knew. You know, we had a couple guys that were really, really sick. The other guys had no symptoms. They just had it. So we're all trying to figure this thing out on the fly. Like what's going on here? But I think we were really concerned, and you know, Greg and Steve will talk. You know, we had the head coaches meetings once a week, and there was real trepidation that we would even play a season. And then if we did, would we only play conference games? And if we did, would there be an NCAA tournament or a Big Ten tournament? And we had that conversation right up until the Big Ten tournament started. So, you know, I think there was a lot of anxiety surrounding what are you doing, who you with, where you going, are we going to get it, are we going to get shut down, the program, or are we going to get shut down individually? When really we should, you know, we just try to stay healthy. I mean, I saw some of our guys and how bad they felt. You don't want anybody to have to go through that.
Steve?
You know, the same concerns, you know, we had as coaches too. Think about it from the players' perspective. They didn't know up until the first game if we were going to have a season themselves. So they really didn't prepare the way that they normally would. They could never go home and see their families because of the 14-day quarantine period if you return from travel. Their life was really turned upside down. And you don't want to send your kids off to college and have that kind of experience. Stay in your room. Don't talk to anybody. Don't go to any events. And, you know, that's what we were asking our players, you know, to do, and not knowing if they were going to have a season. I remember Gio Baker came in my office. It's hard to be motivated when everybody's talking about no non-conference and possibly not the season, especially when the season ended so abruptly the year before. So real hard for them to focus. You know, and have goals and to be the kind of team that they wanted to be, and doing nothing together. Like this summer, we put together team Tuesdays, like we did team events. We couldn't do any of that last year. They all went, I sent them all home at the end of our 8 weeks, which we couldn't do last year, because if they went home, they had to quarantine coming back for 14 days. They had already quarantined before summer started. So there were so many obstacles. And as Fran said, we were on the phone with the doctors more than anything all last year. I can't imagine the amount of phone calls as coaches with the Board of Health and all the different people. I felt like I was, you know, getting my PhD and you know, disease awareness or whatever it may be. So it was just, you know, bizarre, and having no experience going through any of that. You're going through it all for the first time. So thankful we're back to some kind of a normal place here. And I'm excited. There's students walking around our campus right now. Our players are going to events. They went to a soccer game yesterday. Those are all things that they couldn't do. And that's a big part of the college experience.
And to your point, Fran, there were times, and I know, Greg, you experienced this, where you think you're going to get on the plane and you're going to play this game, and then it got canceled. So it was down to sometimes hours before, an hour before, whether you're going to actually play that game. All right, let me spin forward here. What aspect of the last year and a half do you think will stay with us in college basketball? And maybe it's as much as in recruiting, using Zoom, using this platform to, you know, knock down a visit to make sure someone's really interested, or getting, you know, high school coach, AU coach, family, all on one screen together, save some money, save some time. Greg, I'll start with you. What are some things, if anything, that you think will save going forward from this last year and a half?
Yeah, I think that's exactly one of them, Andy, is the ability, you know, March 10th of 2020, I didn't know what Zoom was, you know, so I quickly got educated on all the different platforms that there are to be able to do this. But I think that's one of them. And I think for our league specifically, as Fran mentioned, the meetings, and I think, Fran, they even got up to twice a week as we really came down the stretch. I think just getting all of us on the same page, you know, typically we only see each other at games and then at the head coaches meeting in the fall. So this was a chance for us to really connect, not only in those meetings, but the phone calls back and forth between, you know, the 14 of us. So I think for our league, it brought our coaches closer together. And that was mentioned right from the start, that we were going to have to all be on the same page and work through this, even though what Fran had to deal with in Iowa City and what Steve has had to deal with out there at Rutgers is totally different than what I had at Madison, you know, or in Madison. We all had different things we had to deal with individually on your own campus, your own county, your own state. But I think it was really good for us to be able to share a lot of those things and help each other through it.
Steve and Fran, what do you think will stick?
Well, I tell you, I've loved, the Zoom, being able to get my staff together at a moment's notice. That's helped me and my team together too. And I think moving forward here, there's some really good parts of, obviously the Zoom and, interacting with all the different facets of your program through this. Doesn't take the place of in person, because I want to get back to some of that, but boy, it's a nice addition to, the arsenal that you have as a head coach to try to bring people together in recruiting and with marketing and all the different aspects of your program that you have to be involved with.
I think, and Greg alluded to this, I think it really forced us all to think more big picture. I work at the University of Iowa. My responsibility is to advance our program, our institution, our student athletes. And that's what our focus is. That's what Steve's focus is. That's what Greg's focus is. But when we were all on those phone calls, dealing with a lot of different things, like Greg said, different states had different rules. We were all in this together, and we all ultimately wanted the same thing. So I think you tend to now view our league and college basketball maybe a little bit differently. And that's why I say the big picture aspect. We all love the game. We all love our jobs. We all love coaching these kids. And we want to get back out there in front of big crowds and play the game the way it's supposed to be played. I think some of the great games that we had last year, nobody's in the building. That won't happen this year. We're thrilled about that. The Zoom thing is, I was with Greg. I didn't know what it was. And I've been amazed at what its capabilities are. But again, I'll go back to what Steve said. There's no substitute, especially in the recruiting process or with your players, for personal relationships. And you have to do that face to face. You can get some stuff done on Zoom, and that can be maybe the first step, but that can't be all it is. You got to go a lot further than that.
All right, so I want to pick up what you just said about the crowds, because we can't wait to have these arenas back. All three of you play in real special home courts, and you missed it. And I'm curious, and I think, Steve, you and I had this conversation last year when I did one of your games. Can you put a point number on what you think was lost last year? And maybe I'll start with you, Steve, and Greg and Fran, if you can follow up on not playing those home games versus what you may get back in playing them at the RAC, at Carver Hawkeye, and the Kohl Center. Steve, you start.
Well, I think it was huge. In a lot of ways, our players want to play in front of fans. And I think they work really hard to be able to show off their talents in front of people. And I know having an empty gym, it took us time to adjust to that. I think it took time for the referees to adjust to that too. Players, everybody that was a part of your program. And I think our players, missed the pageantry around a basketball game, the day before, people talking about it, people in line for tickets after the game, when they go out to a restaurant, so it was a lot missed. I know, Rutgers Nation was sorely missed by, our players and our program. And it does help you win basketball games. And you go into Wisconsin and the place is packed. It's just, and never mind Iowa and all the different places in our league. When fans are there, it just changes the environment, gives the guys motivation. And I remember saying numerous times to our guys, we got to bring our own motivation today. The fans can't help you get through this part of the game. You got to dig and claw. So we're really looking forward to having, fans back in the stands.
Greg?
Yeah, I think, I sensed pretty early on that it was going to be easier to compete and win it on the road and harder to win at home. It took all that home court advantage for the most part out and really, made it more of a level playing field, I guess, so to speak, because I think we all get inspiration and different charges at different times during games from our home crowd. And, a lot of players too like playing on the road, like going into a hostile environment. So all those things, the advantage I think sometimes we have here at the Kohl Center is Steve has at the RAC and Fran has at Carver. You notice a lot of that same vibe obviously wasn't there. And I don't know if it seemed like it made it a little bit easier and harder to win at home and a little easier to compete on the road.
It's interesting because, I've talked to a lot of the players, and obviously two of them, live in my house. They hated it. They just did, and going on the road is not easy in this league, but that's what competition is. That's the fun of it. I remember I felt particularly bad for Steve. I said something to him right before our game. I mean, there was no fans at all. We played a phenomenal game. And, and I think when Steve first got there, it wasn't packed. And then he built it so that it was packed. And it's like you finally get to that point and now there's nobody there. And it was disappointing for both teams. I think, the environment at the Kohl Center, when we go over there, it's a rivalry game because of the proximity of our states, and both teams were good. Both teams were veteran clubs. Nobody there. And the players just said to him, man, boy, we can't wait to get back to what it was like. We talk all the time. I don't know the number, maybe you may know this, like 47 or 48 straight years we've led the nation in attendance in our league. And that's the beauty of it. And that's why student athletes choose to come and play in our programs. And so the idea that we're going to get back to that point, I think, is exciting for everybody.
So I think both things can be true on this next topic, which is the Big Ten had the best regular season in decades, the last 2-year period, without question. And I'm not just saying this because of the logo behind me and on my chest here. I believe it. The numbers back it up. Same time, and all of you guys won a game, at least. Postseason, Final Four, championship still has been a bit of a struggle, and certainly was disappointing deeper into the tournament last March. But both things can be true. Great regular season, best in the country, and a disappointing overall postseason. We'll start with you, Fran, and go around our little Zoom room here. Your thoughts on the two, and how, if you have to, even not you, but like, does the league have to solve anything, or is this just one game and that's what it is?
No, there's nothing to solve. We had 12 teams ranked at one point. Nobody else has ever done that. And I think that speaks to the quality of coaches and players in our league. We have the best TV package. And, we talk about, we beat each other up. Well, it's really hard to win a game in this league. It's really hard to win a game on the road. But we all know what it takes. You get to the tournament, it's one game. This tournament was not properly seeded. I can tell you, Grand Canyon was not a 15 seed, very poorly seeded. And then you factor in the officiating. I saw what happened in a couple games with teams in our league, guys in foul trouble that would not have been in foul trouble, should not have been in foul trouble. But you have different officials. I mean, anything can happen. Once you get to a lose, you're out. Okay, until they go to a 7-game series, which is what the pros do, and that assures that the best teams win. Anybody can lose on any given day in overtime. The wrong guy gets in foul trouble. The wrong guy sprains his ankle. So I don't think you make excuses. I think you celebrate the fact that we had so many teams ranked. We had so many high seeds. We had a bunch of teams still win a game. The tournament was not properly seeded. And that's not on the committee. It was an impossible task this year. And I think, in fairness, you have to say that. So, we're going to come back at it again next year. We'll have a bunch more teams ranked. We'll have a bunch more teams beating up on each other, and we'll get to the tournament. And some teams will advance and some teams won't.
Steve,
I look at our league and my snapshot of 5 years. It's the most competitive league in the country by far. I know the last 2 years. We also got through COVID last year. We did as good a job as any league in the country to navigate that too. So not only having 12 teams ranked, we got Hall of Fame coaches. We got 2 guys on this call that have won and have winning percentages that are off the charts, and they'll be Hall of Fame coaches too in the future. I mean, every night you go out and you play, elite programs, and every night it's a packed house. 47 years, I think 48 years, we've led the nation in fan attendance. I mean, if you're just going to decide only one team leaves at the end of the year happy, and we had a heck of a year. We're going to have another one, coming up here. It's an exciting league. Like Fran said, the TV contract is crazy. The amount of exposure our student athletes get is unbelievable. And the challenges around every corner. You go play at Michigan State, and then the next time you got to go see Greg Gard in Wisconsin. And then, hey, then you're going to head out and you got Fran at home in Illinois on the road. I mean, it's just unbelievable, the challenges in this league. And, you know, proud to be a part of this league, and also proud to be with some of the best coaches, and not just coaching wise, just great people. And we got through this pandemic this year because everyone helped everybody, you know, moving forward to try to have the season that we had. A lot of leagues had shutdowns. A lot of teams couldn't go to the NCAA tournament because of the shutdown. So tip of the hat to all the coaches and administrators that made this a great year for us. And we're going to have another great year this year.
Yeah, Andy, I'll, you know, kind of add on or just repeat what Fran and Steve talked about. You know, I've been in this league for a long time, 20 years. And I've seen a lot of good teams. We've had really good teams here at Wisconsin. I've seen good teams at all the other schools too. And it's hard. You get to, as Fran mentioned, you get 40 minutes. And if you have a bad 5 or 8 minutes, because as I have always said, all the bad teams are on spring break. You got 68 left, and they're all pretty good, if not really good. And as Fran mentioned, I mean, his game with Grand Canyon, it's the matchups. It's the fact that you're playing really good teams. If you get a guy in foul trouble, you get somebody hurt. You know, we had a team here back in 2007 that was, you know, ranked in the top 5 in the country, and we lose Brian Butch to a dislocated elbow, and we don't even get out of the first weekend. And we had, you know, a top 5 team all year, and that's just how those things can happen. And again, just with the matchups, you get a bad matchup that maybe throws you a few curveballs, and you know, the next thing you know, you're walking home. So I don't think, as Fran mentioned, I don't think there's anything to solve. I think we just keep going at it, and somebody will get somebody. We've had a lot of teams in the Final Four. You know, we lost to the team that won the whole thing. Steve lost to a team that went to the Final Four. So you know, I think there's you know, there's a lot of really good things going on in this league, and you know, that the national championship in due time will take care of itself. But we just enjoy, I don't know how much we enjoy beating the heck out of each other, but it makes this league unbelievable.
All right, last 2 quick things here. You all have players that decided to come back with that bonus year. In the case with you at Rutgers, obviously guys withdrew from the draft. But if we can real quick on those guys. So for you, Greg, it's Brad Davison. For you, Steve, Gio and Ron. And then Jordan, for you, Fran, just your thoughts on them coming back and what they mean to the program, what they can do this season. We'll start with you, Greg.
Well, for me, with such a young group, you know, if I could pick anybody that could come in and help in our locker room and be an extension of the coaching staff, it's Brad Davison. I mean, he's as good a leader as I've been around in my time in college basketball. And, you know, he wants to get into coaching. He doesn't want to go do the pro route. So he'll jump into coaching. He's in grad school right now, working on his master's, and he'll be a really good one. But to have him be able to help in our locker room, along with, you know, some of our younger guys that got a little older, Tyler Wall, Johnny Davis. But in terms of a leadership and a voice in the locker room, he's as good as it gets.
Steve?
Yeah, first, you know, just have 2 great people back with Gio and Ron. They have done an unbelievable job at the university, within the community. But I'm really thankful to all the players, you know, with the portal this year, the way that it was, and all the different obstacles that they fought. You know, I'm really proud, all of them, you know, that decided to stay and continue to help us be a really good basketball program. So it's great to have those 2 guys have another opportunity. You know, I always tell them all the time, I tell this to our players, they don't seem to get it till they left. I said, don't be in a hurry to leave college. It's, you know, a great time in your life, and, you know, to get more education and to develop more and to meet more people is always a great thing. So we're thankful to have them back, and we're excited about the year, and they've just added to that excitement.
You know, for us, you know, it's great to get Jordan back because, like Greg said, we have a young team as well. So to have another veteran guy who can play multiple positions is critical. But I mean, just statistically, you know, a guy's going to make 93s. That always helps. It helps stretch the floor. I mean, he's a big late game player. Nothing rattles him. And he's really smart. And, we have some good young guards that I think he can help mentor along the way. And he fits incredibly well in the locker room. And we're just thrilled to have him back.
All right, last thing. Fran, you've got Steve and Greg. Greg, Steve and Fran. Steve, Fran and Greg. When you're looking at the scout, what is it about, start with you, Fran, a Pikiell Rutgers, a Gard Wisconsin that you have to guard against?
Well, with Steve's teams are always going to compete really hard, especially defensively. They're going to be physical. They're going to be mentally tough. They've got gamers. I think he does a great job coaching those guys that way. They compete. Each team is different. Geo Baker is one of those special dudes now. When you come down the stretch, he gives you a chance all by himself a lot of times. I think we saw Harper explode. So he's got talent, but he's got, I think a great identity, and I think you could say the same for Greg in the sense that, they compete really hard. They move and share the ball. They defend, and they execute their system incredibly well. So you have to execute against them. You have to compete on every possession. You've got to rebound. We, as against either team, we're going to try to run. We're going to try to get out and kind of do what we do, and they're going to try to do what they do. And as a result, I think if you look at the games with all three of our programs in the last few years, they've been phenomenal. We've won some, we've lost some, but every one has been a phenomenal basketball game. And that's, I think, what this league's all about.
Steve?
Oh, well, I got to figure out how to beat these two guys. So they got a lot of W's against us, but respect both the programs. Fran's teams, they score and they're actually fun to watch. I enjoy watching them on tape. And, he plays a lot of guys. They're fearless. I love watching him on the sidelines too. He's animated and involved. Are two good words for him.
And passionate too, but go ahead.
Yeah, passionate. And so, competitive always. And they play a unique style. They get up and down. They change up defenses. They do a lot of things. And then Greg, when you go into that, it's one of the toughest venues to go to. And his teams are going to be smart. And like I tell our guys, 0 turnovers is too many in this game. Like, you can't have any against Wisconsin. They do an unbelievable job. All his players know their places on the court. They're really difficult. You can't make any mistakes in that game. You got to be smart and you got to be disciplined too. And he does an unbelievable job. They just win. So they're two incredible programs and two incredible coaches with terrific venues and a rabid fan base. So real competitive. I got to figure it out. So Andy, you got any suggestions for me against either of them? I'll take it.
Well, I think I've told this to Steve before, before or after games, that how he has transformed the culture at Rutgers. And it started with just how hard he got him to play and buying in with that and the hard hat defensive mentality. And now, as Fran mentioned, you add talent to that, and you have a Geo Baker, a Ron Harper, and other guys that they've had come through there to that and developing that mentality. Now you've got a really sustainable thing going. And I think that's what, Steve has done. What I noticed was that the culture changed in terms of how they got much more tough-minded. They guarded you. He understood really fast how you have to compete in this league. And I think he did an exceptional job of quickly turning that program. And for Fran, we're obviously our state's border. So as he mentioned, there's a border rival there. But just as Steve mentioned with Fran, how they play, I was watching their assist to turnover numbers last year, and it was phenomenal. Their points per possession, how efficient they were, how they shared the ball. And their assist numbers were through the roof, and they were playing fast, but not turning it over. So that obviously speaks well to how well he teaches and how well their players buy into that. But like Steve mentioned, they are fun to watch. They're not fun to play against because you better get back. You better get back quick. And obviously, he had the National Player of the Year, in Luka, and the job him and his staff did developing him from where he came from as a freshman to where he finished as a senior. Obviously, that's one of the great stories over the last couple of years in college basketball was Luka Garza, and obviously that's a credit to Fran and his program.
Well, I'll tell you, it is crazy when you think about this league, where Luka Garza started to where he finished, where Frank Kaminsky started to where he finished, 2 national players of the year who were not thought to be that out of high school, and your time's coming there, you're going to get one of those too, Steve. But you got great talent coming through there, no question about it. All 3 of these programs, I think, will be in the NCAA tournament. Long road to get there, but most importantly, I think we're all going to see each other in person here sooner than later. Appreciate all of you. Thank you. Glad you all had a safe summer, and we'll talk soon.